He proposed to her on our anniversary, so I invited her husband. The night started with candles, roses, and a table for two, just like it always had. For 7 years, Emma and I celebrated our anniversary at Dolores, the little Italian place on the corner with the red checkered tablecloths and violins that played softly in the background. This time, I'd reserved our usual table by the window, overlooking the cobbled alley lit by hanging lanterns. I wore the navy blue suit she once said brought out my eyes, and I brought her the same white tulips I had on our first date. Everything was perfect. Or it should have been. She walked in 20 minutes late, her perfume floating into the room before she did. Too sweet, too much. And her dress?
Scarlet. Tight.
Definitely not the kind of thing she used to wear for me. But I smiled, told her she looked beautiful. She smiled back, distracted. Her eyes scanned the restaurant like she was looking for someone. That should have been my first warning. As we sat down, she barely touched the wine I ordered. The waiter brought our appetizer, stuffed mushrooms, her favorite. She didn't eat a bite. Just kept checking her phone, pretending to laugh at my jokes, eyes darting toward the entrance every few minutes. I should have known. Hell, part of me did know. But denial is a cozy blanket when your whole life depends on believing someone still loves you. Halfway through the main course, she excused herself. "Just a minute," she said, powdering my nose. That minute turned into 5. Then 10. I stared at my half-eaten pasta, heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. Something was wrong. Then I saw him. He walked in like he owned the place, tall, sharp suit, slick hair. I'd seen his face once before. In a photo she didn't mean for me to see. Labeled work dinner. But his arm was too tight around her waist, and her smile was too soft. I told myself it was harmless. I wanted it to be harmless. She came back with him. And that's when the room stopped breathing. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even look guilty. She looked like someone fulfilling a plan. "Liam," she said, "this is Sean." She didn't introduce him as a friend, or co-worker, or anything else that might have made this remotely logical. She just let the silence thicken, let me stew in it. Sean sat down. At our table. I waited for her to say something, anything, but she just smiled like we were in a play, and this was all rehearsed. Then he did it. Pulled out a velvet box from his coat and opened it. A ring. A goddamn diamond ring. "Emma," he said in front of me, "will you marry me?" The restaurant fell silent. Even the violinist stopped mid-note. My ears rang. My fingers clenched the edge of the table so hard I thought I'd break it. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say this was a joke. But she smiled. Not at me. At him. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." And just like that, my whole world folded in on itself. But I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table or throw a drink in her face. I just stared. Calmly. Deadly. Because I had a plan too. You see, Emma wasn't just cheating on me. She was married to someone else. Sean didn't know that part. But I did. Because I found the marriage certificate 3 weeks ago. She married Tom Benson in Vegas 8 years ago. Never got divorced. Kept it hidden while she played house with me. I found Tom on Facebook. Sent him a message. Just a casual hello. Asked if he was still married to Emma. His reply was short. "Wait, what?" And so we talked. Late-night calls, screen-shared photos, even a Zoom meeting where he showed me their wedding video. She looked happy. Just like she did with me. Just like she did with Sean. That's when we decided something. Something poetic. So as Emma wiped away fake tears of joy, and Sean slid that ring on her finger across from me, the waiter approached with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the gentleman over there," he said, pointing to the door. And in walked Tom. The moment her eyes met his, her face crumbled. "Tom?" Sean asked, confused. "Who is this?" Tom walked up slowly, casually, like he'd been waiting for this moment for years. "Her husband," he said simply. The silence shattered like glass. Emma stood, trembling now. "Tom, I can explain." "No need," Tom said. "You're good at this. Must have taken years of practice." Sean looked from her to me, then to Tom. "Wait. What the hell is going on?" "She married me. Tom said, holding up the certificate. Never divorced me. Lived a second life with Liam. And now she's saying yes to you. Sean backed away from the table like she'd suddenly caught fire. No, she said, reaching for him. It's not what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think, I said, finally standing. You thought you'd make a fool out of all of us. But the joke's on you. She looked at me, tears brimming. Liam, please. I held up a hand. Save it. By now, the whole restaurant was watching. Phones were out. Someone was recording. I didn't care. Sean shook his head. I was going to marry you. Emma reached for his arm, but he stepped back. I trusted you, he whispered, voice cracking. Tom laughed bitterly. So did I. Then together we walked out, me, Tom, and even Sean. We left her standing there, alone at a table that was never hers to begin with. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment, all of us quiet. Drinks, Tom said. Absolutely, Sean replied. And I nodded. Because sometimes revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just needs to be precise.
Timed. Perfect.
That night, as the three of us clinked glasses in a nearby bar, I realized something. I wasn't just free from Emma, I was finally awake. And damn, it felt good. Liam Hayes wasn't the kind of man who wore his heart on his sleeve. He was measured, composed, a man who believed in effort, patience, and quiet strength. People at his firm called him reliable.
Steady.
The kind of guy who never forgot a birthday, who left notes in lunchboxes, who kissed his wife on the forehead every morning before leaving for work, whether she was awake or not. But beneath all that predictability was a man who loved with his whole chest. And that was both his power and his curse. Emma came into his life like spring after a brutal winter. She was laughter in a quiet room, spontaneous in ways that made him feel alive again. They met at a book fair, Liam looking for something intellectual, Emma flipping through romance novels with titles like Love Me Twice. She made some joke about how the protagonist in her book had worse communication skills than her ex, and Liam, charmed, offered a counterpoint that led to coffee, then dinner, then 5 years of what felt like real happiness. They married in a simple ceremony. No grandeur, no pretense, just a white dress, a gray suit, and a backyard full of fairy lights. And for a while it was beautiful. Messy, imperfect, but beautiful. They fought, yes, like any couple. But they always came back to each other. That was the unspoken promise. What Liam didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Emma had long since started rewriting their story without telling him. In the early years she was all in. She cooked with him, dreamed with him, planned vacations they couldn't afford. But something shifted around year 4. At first it was subtle. More nights out with friends from work, phone calls she took in the bathroom, lipstick she never wore for him. Liam chalked it up to stress. He told himself she was just evolving, and maybe he needed to evolve too. But when he started noticing the way she avoided eye contact during dinner, the way she no longer corrected his silly mistakes or laughed at his awkward dancing in the kitchen, the ache began. It was small at first, a flicker of doubt. But doubt is a seed, and Emma was watering it every day without knowing. Then came the missed anniversary. Their 6th. She had an off-site training, she claimed. Out of town, can't reschedule. Liam, heartbroken but still hopeful, surprised her at the hotel she said she was staying in. She wasn't there. That was the first time the idea of betrayal entered his mind with sharp, undeniable weight. He asked her about it later. She got defensive, accused him of not trusting her. And Liam, exhausted from pretending everything was okay, just nodded and apologized. But he started watching. Quietly.
Carefully.
He noticed names at her phone that didn't match her stories. Long calls to numbers with no saved contact. One day, when she left her laptop open, he saw an email, Sean. Just that name. Short message. Asterisk, I miss you too. Can't wait for next week. X, asterisk, and a photo of her in a red dress he'd never seen. That's when everything cracked. He didn't confront her immediately. Instead, Liam chose restraint. He printed the email, tucked it in a drawer, began documenting things, dates, times, receipts. If he was going to be wrong, he needed to be absolutely sure. But the more he looked, the less room there was for hope. In that time, something else surfaced. While digging through old paperwork, looking for a document to prove their lease history, he found something odd. A certificate. Faded, water-stained. A marriage license. Not theirs. Not his name. Thomas Benson and Emma Rose Carlisle. Married in Clark County, Nevada. 8 years ago. The date shocked him. She married Tom before she met Liam. But she never mentioned a divorce. His hands trembled as he stared at it, his mind sprinting through scenarios. Was this old? A mistake? Maybe she got divorced and forgot to mention it. But even as he tried to rationalize, he knew.
You don't forget that.
He searched social media for Thomas Benson and found him in less than 5 minutes. A real estate agent in Phoenix. Smiling in every photo. Harmless looking. In his bio. Happily married. Liam's heart sank. He stared at his screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard before finally typing. Hi, Tom. I think we need to talk about Emma. The response came hours later. Who are you? He explained.
Carefully.
Tom didn't believe him at first. But Liam sent the screenshots. The photos. The wedding picture of her with Tom matched the one on her desk at work, though she always said that was her cousin's wedding. Tom was stunned. Angry. But mostly broken. I thought she just traveled a lot for work, Tom said on a late-night call. She was always on the move. I never thought she had an entire other life. Liam had to laugh bitterly. She had 2 lives. Maybe 3. That's when the idea was born. Not out of revenge, exactly. Not at first. It was more about clarity. About holding up a mirror. Emma had created a web so complex that it deserved to be unraveled properly. And what better day than the one she once claimed meant everything to her? Their anniversary. So Liam set the plan. Reserved the restaurant. Wore the suit. Bought the flowers. Pretended everything was normal. Invited Emma, like always. Told her he couldn't wait to see her. And then, secretly reached out to Tom. He told Tom everything. Even predicted that she might bring someone. If you're up for it, Liam said, come to the restaurant. Be ready. I have a feeling you'll see what I've seen. Tom hesitated. He wasn't the confrontational type. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he needed answers too. As the date drew closer, Liam noticed a change in Emma. She was nervous, anxious, distracted. He watched her pack a small gift box into her purse the night before. A ring? Maybe.
She didn't say.
On the night itself, as she walked into the restaurant in that blazing red dress, Liam knew. She was going to make her move.
Not to him.
To someone else. Maybe Sean. Maybe another poor soul. The pieces were finally aligned. Emma had always been good at compartmentalizing. She could be sweet, even affectionate with Liam, while texting Sean under the table. She could spend the weekend with Tom and send I miss you texts to both the other men. It was almost a gift, really. The way she manipulated her voice, her smile, her tears. She was never fully lying, just never telling the whole truth. In her mind, love wasn't about commitment. It was about control. Power. She chose the people who needed her, who wanted stability because they were easy to mold. She knew Liam wanted a family. She knew Tom was sentimental. She knew Sean was ambitious, eager to please, and financially successful. They each gave her something different. And Emma? She gave each of them just enough to keep them hooked, dangling on strings she held so delicately. But the thing about juggling 3 lives is that eventually gravity wins. Back at the restaurant, she didn't recognize the trap. Not until the moment Tom walked in. She faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. Enough for Sean to glance sideways, confused. Enough for Liam to lock eyes with her and let her know, without words, that her game was up. And when Tom said, I'm her husband, everything cracked open. For the first time, Liam saw something in Emma he hadn't seen in years: fear. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Just raw, unfiltered panic. like a child caught stealing from a cookie jar, but multiplied by 10 years of lies. Sean looked at her, stunned. What is he talking about? Emma opened her mouth, closed it. Her hands fluttered like she was underwater, reaching for air. Tell him, Tom said, voice cold. Tell him who I am. I can explain, she murmured, her eyes pleading. Can you? Liam said. Because we've all been waiting. The violinist in the background started playing again.
Soft.
Melancholic. Like the soundtrack of a dying relationship. Emma sank into the chair. Her mask had slipped. Her face was pale. She looked at each of them like strangers.
And in a way, they were.
Not because she didn't know them, but because she never allowed them to really know her. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she whispered. That's the problem, Liam replied, standing slowly. You never thought it would. Because you never thought we'd talk to each other. Compare stories. Dig deeper. Tom nodded. You just thought we'd keep orbiting around you forever. Like you were the sun. Sean turned to her, jaw clenched. Were you ever going to tell me? Emma didn't answer. She just lowered her eyes. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't a woman who made one mistake. This was a woman who built her life on them.
Carefully.
Intentionally. Without remorse. So when the three men walked out, they weren't just leaving Emma behind. They were stepping out of a shadow she had spent years casting. Each of them was hurt.
Betrayed.
But free.
And Emma?
She was left to sit in the ruins of the fantasy she created. Alone. At the table where her lies finally caught up with her. In the hours that followed the dramatic confrontation, Dolores, once known for candlelit romance and homemade pasta, turned into the backdrop of a viral scandal. The video surfaced before Liam even got home. Some teenage girl at a nearby table had recorded the entire moment. Tom declared, I'm her husband, right down to Emma's face draining of color like ink in water. Within minutes, it hit social media. A post titled Asterisk, she said yes. Then her husband walked in. Asterisk spread like wildfire. By morning, the clip had over 1 million views. Comments ranged from shocked sympathy to merciless ridicule. Plot twist of the year. Men finally winning in the age of red flags. She played herself. Justice, served with garlic bread. Emma's name trended for 72 hours. Not just her first name, her full name. Someone found her LinkedIn. Her workplace. Her wedding photos. Even a comment she'd left under Sean's old Instagram photo that read, Can't wait to call you mine forever red heart, got screenshot and shared with mocking captions. But behind the viral headlines and digital pitchforks was something deeper. Something real. Liam sat on his apartment floor the next morning, legs folded, head against the cold wall, the tulips he'd brought for their anniversary still untouched on the table. He hadn't slept. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends, old coworkers, even strangers offering solidarity. But he didn't want solidarity. He wanted quiet. He kept replaying the moment Emma said yes, not to him, not to Tom, but to Sean. Like he never mattered. Like 7 years had just been scenery. His brain knew better. He'd seen the signs, heard the cracks in her excuses. But his heart, his stubborn, loyal, stupid heart, had still hoped that somehow she was redeemable. That there was a version of her that loved him honestly once. But maybe that version never existed. Across town, Emma was experiencing a different fallout. She hadn't shown up for work. Her boss had called 3 times, then emailed. Asterisk, we've been made aware of the viral video. Please take some time off. HR will be in touch. Asterisk, she stared at the screen for an hour before shutting her laptop. Then, silence. Emma never expected it to collapse like this. She had always believed she was in control. That juggling her lives wasn't reckless. It was survival. Liam was safe.
Steady. Tom was history.
Sean was her future. She thought she could exit each chapter quietly, without consequence. But the problem with compartmentalization is that the walls eventually crumble. And now, in the aftermath, she couldn't even recognize the person staring back at her in the mirror. No makeup. No smile. Just the raw, puffy-eyed reality of a woman whose entire scheme had unraveled in front of half the internet. The worst part wasn't even the hate. It was the silence from the people she thought she could manipulate. Liam had blocked her number.
Tom, too.
Sean, who had once called her 10 times a day, hadn't called at all. For the first time, she felt small. Not desirable. Not adored. Just exposed. She spent 2 days hiding in her apartment, curtains drawn, phone flipped face down. On the third morning, she opened her inbox and found a single email from Sean. Subject line, "You're a brilliant liar." That was it. No body. No sign-off. Just those 4 words. She read it a dozen times. Laughed once. Then cried. In a nearby cafe, Liam sipped cold coffee and tried to make sense of the aftermath. Not of the betrayal, but of who he was now. For years, his identity was so tied to Emma. Their routines, their dreams, their shared playlists, inside jokes. Now there was just silence where those things used to live. He hadn't gone back to their apartment.
Couldn't.
He stayed at a friend's guest house, where the air didn't smell like her perfume and the walls didn't whisper old memories. But even so, memories followed him. Like the way she used to rub the back of his neck when he drove. Or how she'd fold his sweaters like she was folding something sacred. It was hard to reconcile that Emma with the woman at the table who smiled at another man with the same lips she once used to say forever. Still, there were small moments of hope. Tom had texted him the night after the incident. Just a single line. Asterisk, drinks again this weekend? Asterisk. Sean surprisingly reached out too. Not with anger, but with confusion. "Can I ask you something?" he wrote. "Did she ever really love us?" Liam stared at the message for an hour before replying. Asterisk, maybe. But not the way we loved her. Asterisk. The pain wasn't gone, but it was changing. Sharpening into something manageable. Liam had started walking more, long, slow walks without destination. One evening, he passed Alora's. The window still displayed the same red-checkered tablecloths. The violinist played inside, like nothing had changed. But it had.
He didn't go in.
Just stood across the street and watched. In the background of the city's hum, people still fell in love. Still held hands. Still believed. And maybe, just maybe, so would he again. Emma, meanwhile, found herself reaching for a pen for the first time in years. She had once dreamed of being a writer. Before the lies, before the chaos. She sat at her kitchen table, a mess of tissues and coffee cups around her, and started writing, not to justify, not to explain, but just to understand. "This isn't an apology," she scribbled in a journal, asterisk, "because I'm not ready to ask for forgiveness. But I need to admit that I built my life like a house of cards. And when it collapsed, I realized I was never standing on solid ground." Asterisk. The words flowed like tears. Maybe she'd never send them to anyone. But writing them down made her feel something again. Something real. In the chaos of consequences, each of them was learning in their own way. Liam was learning to rebuild. Slowly. He joined a running group, signed up for cooking classes, and began sleeping through the night again. Some days were hard, when a song reminded him of her or someone mentioned anniversaries, but they were his days now. Fully his. Tom and Sean, oddly enough, became friends. Bonded through shared pain, they started swapping stories, laughing about things that would have made them cry a week earlier. Their pain turned into a kind of grim humor, a survival tool. And Emma? She was alone.
For now.
No men. No fanfare. Just her. And the ugly truth she tried to outrun. She had a long road ahead. Maybe the world would never forgive her. Maybe she didn't deserve it. But if she was lucky, someday, she'd forgive herself. Pain is a strange teacher. It strips everything false, burns away the stories we tell to feel safe. But in its ashes, it plants seeds of honesty, of humility, of change. For Liam, the fire had passed. The scars were still there, but so was the light. He looked up one evening at the stars above his friend's porch and thought, asterisk, maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the clearing before something new could grow. Asterisk. And somewhere in the same city, Emma wrote her final words for the night. Asterisk, I don't know what kind of woman I am anymore. But I know I don't want to be the one I was. Asterisk. The air had begun to feel lighter for Liam. It wasn't that the pain had vanished. It still lived in the quiet, in the songs that caught him off guard, in the soft burn behind his eyes when he saw couples laugh across coffee tables. But he was starting to breathe again. For the first time in years, he didn't check his phone expecting Emma's name. He didn't wonder who she was with or if she was lying again. He didn't wonder if he had failed her. Because he hadn't. That clarity, earned through humiliation, sleepless nights, and the long walk through betrayal, became Liam's turning point. It came to him one evening at the park. He was sitting on a weathered bench, watching a little girl chase pigeons while her father laughed from a few feet away. Her joy was unfiltered, raw. And her father, tired-looking, unshaven, but smiling, looked like a man who understood that happiness wasn't found in perfection, but in presence. Liam realized he had spent too long trying to keep happiness, like it was something fragile he could cage. He held Emma tightly, not because she was worthy of it, but because he was afraid of being alone. He had confused loyalty with fear, and that had to change. He took out his phone and deleted the last folder he'd kept hidden, the one with photos, videos, love notes Emma had sent him over the years. It felt like deleting part of a life, but also like making space for a new one. That night, he made a list, not of goals or resolutions, but of acts. Small things he could control. Tangible steps forward.
1.
Move out. Properly. Asterisk, asterisk.
2.
Sign up for the marathon he kept postponing. Asterisk, asterisk.
3.
Start therapy. No shame. Asterisk, asterisk.
4.
Write again. Not reports. Stories. The kind that matter. Asterisk, asterisk. And the last one, scribbled like a secret.
5.
Forgive her. Even if she never says sorry. Asterisk, asterisk. The next day, Liam made calls. Booked sessions. Packed the apartment. He donated the couch they bought together, sold the dresser she picked out, and gave away the teacups from the anniversary set they never used. Then he signed a lease on a small place across town. Nothing grand, just his. His walls, his colors, his future. The act of reclaiming space, physical and emotional, was revolutionary. He didn't announce it online. Didn't post motivational quotes or dramatic selfies. He just lived. But even as Liam moved forward, Emma was spiraling inward. The video had done more than destroy her reputation. It had shredded her identity. Friends stopped calling. Work suspended her indefinitely. Her parents, already distant, sent a stiff message. Asterisk, we're disappointed. Please get help. Asterisk. And Emma? She did what she always did when things collapsed. She ran. Only this time, there was nowhere to go. Her lies had carved out a hollow inside her. One that used to be filled with attention, with flattery, with the rush of feeling wanted. Now it was just echoes. She spent days watching the video over and over, analyzing the frame where Liam's face broke, where Tom's voice cut like a blade, where Sean's eyes filled with betrayal. And the worst part? She didn't even know who she missed. Not really, because her love had never been real. It had been performance constructed around what each man needed. But alone, without an audience, she had nothing to perform for. Until one evening, she opened her journal again and wrote, asterisk, maybe the biggest lie I told was the one where I convinced myself I didn't care. Asterisk. For the first time, she started to see herself not as a victim of love, but as the architect of her own disaster. Meanwhile, something unexpected unfolded in Liam's life. He'd started writing again, not just journaling, but real stories. Fiction, rooted in truth. He shared one anonymously on a storytelling site.
It was raw.
About betrayal. About finding dignity in pain. About walking away not with bitterness, but with grace. It caught fire. Thousands of readers. Comments flooded in. This saved me. I didn't know how to forgive until now. This made me leave a toxic marriage. Liam was stunned. His own pain had turned into something healing for others. For himself. That was when he decided to do more than survive.
He decided to speak. properly.
He agreed to an interview, a podcast that explored betrayal, identity, and rebuilding after loss. He told the story, not to shame Emma, not to dramatize, but to explore the why and the how of what people become when they forget who they are. The episode went live. And within a day, Emma found it. Her name wasn't mentioned, but she knew every detail, every moment, every silence. But what pierced her more than the facts was the tone. He didn't speak with venom. He spoke with sorrow, with clarity, with empathy, and that crushed her more than any insult ever could. She sat on her floor, listening, tears running unchecked. Not out of self-pity, but out of a strange, aching realization. Liam was growing, and she was still standing in the ruins. Days passed. Emma made a decision. She booked an appointment with a counselor, told the truth, the whole truth. Not just about the cheating, but the fear that drove her. The emptiness she tried to fill. The addiction to being adored. The hollowness she masked with lipstick and promises. She didn't know where it would lead, but it was a start. Meanwhile, tension brewed again, not between Liam and Emma, but in the ripple their story had caused. Sean had gone silent since the night at the restaurant. But then he reappeared, with a request. He wanted to meet. Not for closure, not to restart anything, but to understand. Liam agreed. They met at a quiet bar, low lights, low expectations. Sean looked worn, but steady. She told me things I wanted to hear, he said. You ever wonder if we only saw what we needed? Liam nodded. All the time. Do you think she ever loved us? Sean asked, voice low. Liam paused. Then, carefully. I think she wanted to, but she didn't know how. There was silence between them for a while, and then Sean raised his glass. To the truth, he said. Liam clinked his gently. Even when it hurts. In that moment, the final shift occurred. Not in Emma, not in Sean, but in Liam. He realized he no longer needed to prove anything to her, to the world, to himself. The worst had happened, and he had survived it. Not just intact, but stronger. He stood, paid the bill, and walked out into the night. The city hummed with life. And for the first time in a long time, Liam didn't feel like a background character in someone else's story. He was the author now. And he was just getting started. It was late autumn when the final threads began to pull together. The kind of crisp evening where the air smelled of burning leaves, and the sky looked bruised with pinks and purples before the stars took over. Liam stood outside the old community center where he had been invited to speak again, this time not anonymously, but openly, as himself. The event was small, intimate, a storytelling circle for people healing from betrayal, divorce, abandonment, people trying to put themselves back together. Liam hadn't planned to share anything new. But that night felt different, like something was waiting to close. He stepped up to the microphone and looked at the faces in front of him. Some expectant, some guarded, all quietly broken in their own ways. I used to believe love was about holding on, he began. To the person, to the memories, to the promises. I thought if I just held tight enough, everything would eventually come back to what it was. He paused. But sometimes, love is about letting go. Not just of a person, but of the part of you that needed them so badly, you ignored the signs they were never really yours. There was silence. A deep, respectful silence. Then quiet nods. A tear or two. When he stepped down, someone clapped first. Then another. And then the room filled with applause. Not thunderous, but warm. Healing. He smiled politely, shook hands, and stepped outside to catch his breath. That's when he saw her.
Emma.
She was standing just beyond the building's awning, bundled in a gray coat, arms crossed, as if hugging herself against the wind, and everything else. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she stepped forward. I didn't come to ruin anything, she said quickly. I wasn't even sure I'd show up. Liam raised an eyebrow, unsure what to say. The sight of her no longer crushed him. It didn't even sting. But it did bring back something quieter, like reading the final page of a book you once loved. I listened to your podcast, she said.
Twice.
He nodded slowly. I never said I was sorry, she added, voice soft. You didn't have to, Liam said. I already forgave you. Her eyes filled, but she blinked them dry.
Why?
Because carrying hate would have meant I was still holding on to you. She looked down, biting her lower lip. I was lost, Liam. For a long time. I didn't even know how many people I was pretending to be until it all came crashing down. You weren't pretending with me, he said, finally. Not always. There were real moments.
I know that now.
But there weren't enough. She swallowed hard. I'm getting help. Real help. And I'm not asking for a second chance. I just needed you to know I'm not running anymore. There it was. The climax neither of them had expected. Not screaming, not closure through chaos. Just two people standing in the ruins of what they once were, finally telling the truth without agenda. He nodded again, slowly. That matters. More than you know. She gave him a small, sad smile. I hope one day you find someone who gives you back everything you gave me, and more. I hope you find peace, he said, meaning it. There was nothing more to say. She turned to leave, walking slowly down the sidewalk beneath the gold street lamps, her shadow long and thin behind her. Liam didn't follow, because the story was over. Months passed. Winter came in gentle waves, snow dusting the sidewalks, steam curling up from coffee cups in street cafes. Liam's life had become something simple, beautiful in its rhythm. He now taught creative writing classes at the local college, just once a week, but it filled him with something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. His book, the one he started during his recovery, was nearly done. A collection of short stories about resilience, betrayal, and healing. Publishers were interested. He still wrote anonymously online sometimes, still replied to messages from strangers who whispered, Asterisk, your story saved mine. Asterisk. And then came a letter. Not from Emma. Not from Sean or Tom. From a young woman named Clara who'd seen his video and said, Asterisk, you made me believe there's life after heartbreak. Thank you. Asterisk. Her words were simple, but they reminded him of everything he'd gained from everything he'd lost. He folded the letter, placed it in a wooden box labeled Grace, and sat down to write the final chapter of his book. He wrote, Asterisk, we think love fails us. But sometimes it's not love that fails, it's the people. And even when they leave wreckage behind, they leave lessons too. The person I was, who held on too long, who loved too blindly, he deserved better. And the person I've become? He knows now what to choose and, more importantly, what to walk away from. If you're reading this and you've been shattered, I promise you, there's life after the falling apart. And one day, you'll rise from the ashes and realize you were never ruined. You were remade. Asterisk. He closed the laptop. Breathed. Outside, the world was still cold, but it was also filled with light. Windows glowing, snowflakes spinning, children laughing as they dragged sleds through the street. Liam stepped outside with a cup of coffee, wrapped in a scarf, and looked up at the sky. There were no fireworks. No cinematic music, just the quiet assurance of peace, of a chapter ending and a new one waiting. Across the city, Emma placed a photo on her shelf, one of herself alone, smiling gently. Not for an audience, not for a man, just for herself. It had taken months, but she no longer flinched when she looked in the mirror. Therapy helped. Accountability helped more. She was working at a women's shelter now. Volunteering, listening, trying to use her pain for purpose. She still had a long road, but for the first time, she wasn't walking in circles. Back in his own corner of the city, Liam checked his phone. A message from Sean. Tom's getting married next spring. He says you're invited. I say we go together. Toast the guy who dodged a lifetime of hell. Liam chuckled and replied, only if you promise not to propose during the toast. /***Scout's honor, Sean sent back. /***. As snow began to fall more heavily, Liam stepped inside, set his coffee down, and opened a new document. The title? New beginnings. Because endings are only ever the middle of something else. And Liam Hayes, betrayed, broken, healed, and whole, was finally ready to begin again.